The warning signs. Chief Engineer Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of Deep Space Mining Station 217, watching the massive harvesting drones return from another successful collection run in the Kuiper debris field. Something about their movement caught her eye. A slight wobble in their trajectory that shouldn't be there. The Meridian-manufactured drones were supposedly perfect, their alien creators constantly reminding the human crew of their flawless engineering. But Sarah had been working with machinery her entire life, and she knew when something wasn't right. "There it is again," she muttered, tracking one drone's approach with narrowed eyes. The massive machine's port stabilizer twitched, causing a minute deviation in its course, something that would be imperceptible to anyone who hadn't spent thousands of hours observing these behemoths in action. "You're imagining things again, Engineer Chen," came the smooth voice of Operations Director Zixtel from behind her. The tall Meridian's iridescent scales shifted in what Sarah had learned to recognize as mild amusement. "Our drones operate at 99.98% efficiency. The deviation you think you're seeing is well within acceptable parameters." Sarah kept her eyes on the drone, watching as it docked with slightly more lateral thrust than necessary. "With all due respect, Director, something's off. The movement patterns have changed over the past few weeks. It's subtle, but it's there." "Humans," Zixtel sighed, the sound whistling through his respiratory slits. "Always looking for problems where none exist. Your species' tendency toward paranoia is well documented." "It's not paranoia," Sarah insisted, turning to face him. "It's experience. I've worked with complex machinery since I was old enough to hold a wrench. When systems start showing small irregularities like this, it usually means bigger problems are developing underneath." The Meridian's head tilted at an angle that indicated polite dismissal. "Our systems are not like your crude human machinery, Engineer Chen. They are self-correcting, self-optimizing, and operate on principles your species is only beginning to grasp. Trust in Meridian engineering." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Over the next few days, she began keeping detailed logs of the drone's behavior, measuring minute variations in their performance that individually meant nothing but together painted a troubling picture. The wobble was getting worse, even if it remained barely perceptible. Power consumption was up 0.03% across all units. Response times to command inputs had slowed by milliseconds. She brought her findings to her human colleague, Station Security Chief Marcus Rodriguez. Unlike the Meridians, he listened intently as she laid out her concerns in the privacy of his office. "So you think these deviations could indicate a serious problem?" he asked, studying the data on her tablet. "I know they do," Sarah replied, "but the Meridians won't listen. Their faith in their own technology is absolute. They treat these tiny variations as statistical noise. But I've seen this pattern before. Something's degrading in those drones' core systems, and if we don't identify and fix it soon, we could be looking at catastrophic failures." Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "The last thing we need is 20,000-ton drones going haywire in the middle of a debris field. But without Meridian cooperation, our access to their systems is limited. They consider their technology proprietary. Then we need to find a way to prove there's a problem before it's too late," Sarah said. "Because these drones aren't just showing normal wear and tear. These patterns, they're too uniform, too consistent across all units. This feels deliberate." Marcus's eyebrows rose. "Sabotage. That's a serious accusation." "I know, and I can't prove it yet. But something about this doesn't add up." The Meridian's dismissal feels less like confidence and more like they're hiding something. "Keep gathering data," Marcus advised. "Document everything. I'll quietly put my security teams on alert and see if I can dig up anything unusual in the station's access logs. But we need to be careful. If we're wrong about this, it could damage human-Meridian relations. If we're right." He trailed off, leaving the implications hanging. Sarah nodded grimly. The station's position in the Kuiper Belt made it a critical link in humanity's outer solar system operations. If something happened to it, the consequences would be devastating. She turned back to the viewport, watching another drone approach with that telltale wobble. The Meridians might trust their technology blindly, but humans had learned the hard way that even the most sophisticated systems could fail or be made to fail. She pulled up another diagnostic screen and began recording more measurements. The Meridians might dismiss human intuition as paranoia, but Sarah knew better. Sometimes the most important warnings came not from flashing alerts or blaring alarms, but from that quiet voice in the back of your mind, telling you something just wasn't right. Trust your gut. 2 weeks after Sarah first noticed the anomalies, the problems became harder to ignore. During a routine collection run, Drone Unit 47 missed its docking alignment by a full meter, a deviation that even the Meridians couldn't dismiss as statistical noise. But their response only deepened Sarah's suspicions. A simple calibration error, Assistant Director Vexnor assured the station's command staff during an emergency meeting. We've already corrected the issue remotely. There's no cause for concern. Sarah studied the holographic readouts floating above the conference table. With all due respect, this wasn't an isolated incident. I've documented similar alignment issues across multiple units. The pattern suggests a systemic problem, a pattern you perceive through human bias. Vexnor countered smoothly. Our diagnostic systems show no systemic malfunctions. Station Commander Lisa Hayes cleared her throat. Engineer Chen has an exemplary record. If she says there's a pattern, I'm inclined to take her concerns seriously. Commander, Zixtal interjected, his scales rippling with what might have been irritation. We appreciate human diligence, but these drones represent the pinnacle of Meridian engineering. Their control systems are beyond human comprehension. What appears problematic to your engineer is simply the complex interplay of advanced algorithms adjusting to environmental variables. Sarah fought to keep her voice level. Then explain why power consumption has increased by 0.7% across all units in the past week alone. Explain why response times continue to degrade. These aren't environmental adjustments. Something is actively compromising these systems. The meeting devolved into technical debates that resolved nothing. Afterward, Sarah found Marcus waiting outside the conference room. That went well, he said dryly. They're hiding something, Sarah replied, falling into step beside him. Did you find anything in the access logs? Marcus glanced around before responding quietly. Nothing obvious. But there are gaps, millisecond-long interruptions in the security feeds around the drone maintenance base. Could be normal data corruption, but it's happening too regularly, Sarah finished, just like the drone issues. They reached her office, where multiple displays showed real-time telemetry from the drone fleet. Sarah pulled up a series of diagnostics, her frown deepening as she studied the results. Look at this, she said, highlighting a section of code. The drone's base programming is intact, but there are tiny modifications being made to their operational parameters. Each change is insignificant on its own, but they're accumulating. It's like someone slowly poisoning the system. Marcus leaned closer to the display. Can you trace where these modifications are coming from? No, they're being buried in routine update packets. But here's the thing. These changes aren't improving performance like they're supposed to. They're introducing subtle inefficiencies. The drones are working harder to accomplish the same tasks, burning more power, putting more stress on their systems. To what end? Marcus wondered. Sarah's expression was grim. If this continues, eventually something's going to break. And with the amount of volatile material these drones handle, she didn't need to finish the thought. A single drone malfunction could trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. We need proof, Marcus said. Something the Meridians can't dismiss. I might have an idea, Sarah replied, pulling up another screen. The drone's quantum processors are supposed to be tamper-proof, but every system has a weak point. If I can isolate one of these malicious updates as it's being applied. She worked late into the station's artificial night, writing detection algorithms that might catch the subtle changes being made to the drone fleet. The Meridian's dismissal of her concerns felt less like arrogance now and more like desperation, as if they were trying to prevent humans from looking too closely at what was happening. As she worked, a drone passed her window, its movements now noticeably jerky. Sarah watched it dock, noting how its grappling arms trembled slightly as they locked into place. The Meridians might trust their technology blindly, but humans had learned to trust their instincts. And every instinct Sarah had was screaming that they were running out of time. Breaking point. The warning came at 300 station time. Sarah was jolted awake by a priority alert from her detection program. She rushed to her terminal, still pulling on her uniform jacket, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Computer, station-wide emergency channel, authorization Chen Delta 7. She commanded. This is Chief Engineer Chen. All personnel clear docking bays, 3 through 7 immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat. Clear all docking bays immediately. She was already running toward the control center when Commander Hayes' voice came through her comm. Engineer Chen, explain. The drone fleet's control systems are about to fail catastrophically, Sarah replied, breathing hard as she sprinted through the corridors. The malicious code I've been tracking. It's not just degrading their performance anymore. It's about to trigger a complete neural network collapse. She burst into the control center, finding it already occupied by both human and Meridian staff. Director Zixtal turned to her, his scales dark with anger. You overstep your authority, Engineer Chen. Our systems show no indication of imminent failure. Your false alarm will cost us valuable production time. Sarah ignored him, rushing to the main console. Her fingers flew across the controls, bringing up multiple diagnostic screens. Look at the quantum processor load. The degradation has reached critical levels. When these systems fail, we'll lose all control over 20 drones carrying highly volatile mining extract. This is absurd, Vexnor declared. Our safeguards. He was cut off by a shrill alarm. On the main screen, Drone Unit 47's status indicators flashed red. The massive machine had begun to spin, its stabilizers failing completely. Get those docking clamps locked down, Sarah shouted. If that drone breaks free. Too late. With a screech of tearing metal, Unit 47 ripped away from its moorings. Its thrusters fired randomly, sending it careening toward the neighboring units. Emergency containment fields flickered to life, but they weren't designed to handle the momentum of a fully loaded mining drone. Shut them down, Commander Hayes ordered. Emergency shutdown. All units. Controls aren't responding, a Meridian technician reported, his usual calm shattered. The command pathways are corrupted. Sarah was already implementing her backup plan. Marcus, I need station security override. Now. Security Chief Rodriguez didn't hesitate. Authorization Rodriguez Alpha 9. What are you doing? Something stupid, Sarah replied, entering a complex series of commands. The Meridians designed these drones to be unhackable, but they didn't count on someone being crazy enough to try a brute force reset of their quantum cores while they're active. That's impossible, Vexnor protested. The energy feedback alone would fry their processors. Yes, Sarah finished. Better than letting them tear the station apart. But if I can cycle the reset through the emergency broadcast channel, using the station's own quantum comm array as a buffer. Another drone broke free of its restraints. The containment fields were starting to fail. They had seconds, not minutes. Chen, Commander Hayes said quietly, do it. Sarah took a deep breath and executed the command. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the station's lights dimmed as massive power surges coursed through the quantum comm array. The drones shuddered, their thrusters sputtering. Core temperatures critical. Someone shouted. The comm array can't handle this load. Reroute emergency power to the containment fields, Sarah ordered. The drone's processors are going to burn out, but if we can hold them in place. A blinding flash lit up the docking bays as Unit 47's quantum core overloaded. When the glare faded, the drone was dark and still, held in place by the containment fields. One by one, the other drones went dark as their processors failed. For a long moment, silence filled the control room. Then Commander Hayes spoke. Damage report. Docking Bay 4 is compromised, Marcus reported. Minor hull breaches, but containment is holding. No casualties. He paused. The drone fleet is completely disabled. Their quantum cores are burned out. Better than the alternative, Sarah said quietly, looking at the damage reports flowing across her screen. Then something caught her eye. A pattern in the code scrolling past. Wait, Commander, I need to show you something. The malicious code. I can see its full structure now that it's been frozen in the drone's buffer memory. This wasn't just sabotage. This was a test. Hidden agenda. A test. Commander Hayes leaned over Sarah's terminal, studying the complex patterns of code now frozen in the drone's buffer memory. A test for what? Sarah's fingers moved across the console, isolating key segments of the malicious code. Look at how it's structured. These aren't random corruption errors or even standard sabotage. This code was designed to test the drone's vulnerabilities and our responses to them. Director Zixtal had gone utterly still. His scales faded to a pale gray. You are mistaken. Am I? Sarah turned to face him. Because this code contains markers I recognize, markers that match Meridian military protocols. The control room went silent. Marcus stepped closer to Sarah, his hand near his sidearm. Commander Hayes straightened, her expression hardening. Explain, she demanded, addressing Zixtal. The Meridian director remained silent, but Vexenor spoke up, his voice trembling. It wasn't supposed to go this far. The tests were meant to be subtle, controlled. Tests of what? Marcus pressed. Human observation capabilities, Vexenor admitted. Our military command was concerned about how quickly humans adapt to and modify our technology. They wanted to assess your ability to detect and respond to potential threats in our systems. Sarah felt cold anger settling in her chest. You deliberately compromised your own drones, risked this entire station, just to test us. The risks were calculated. Zixtal finally spoke. The degradation was meant to be gradual, barely noticeable. But you detected it far sooner than anticipated. And your solution to the crisis? He gestured at the darkened drones. No Meridian would have attempted such a dangerous override. It should have been impossible. Human intuition, Sarah said. Something your calculations didn't account for. We don't just look at the numbers. We feel when something's wrong, and we're not afraid to try the impossible when lives are at stake. Commander Hayes stepped forward. I want full disclosure. Now, was this an isolated test or part of something larger? Zixtal and Vexenor exchanged glances. Finally, Zixtal spoke. There have been concerns among our military leadership about the speed of human technological advancement. This station was one of several test sites. Several. Marcus demanded. How many other facilities are at risk? Sarah was already pulling up a communication terminal. We need to warn them. If other stations are experiencing similar drone malfunctions. Wait, Vexenor interrupted. The other tests, they're different protocols, different systems. What worked here won't necessarily. Then help us, Sarah said sharply. You've seen what happens when these tests go wrong. Help us prevent more accidents before someone gets killed. A tense moment passed. Then Zixtal moved to a terminal. I will provide access to the test protocols. But this information cannot leave this station. If our military command learns of this breach, they're going to learn of it anyway, Commander Hayes said firmly, because I'm filing a formal complaint with both the Human Meridian Coalition and the Galactic Council. You endangered my station and my crew. There will be consequences. As Zixtal began transferring data to their systems, Sarah studied the incoming information with growing concern. The other tests were indeed different, more subtle, more insidious. Without knowing what to look for, they might never have been detected until it was too late. "What I don't understand," she said, looking at Vexnor, "is why you continued to dismiss our concerns even after the problems became obvious. Your own people could have been killed." The assistant director's scales rippled with what might have been shame. "We were instructed to maintain the test parameters at all costs, to see how humans would respond without Meridian assistance, your species' ability to identify and counteract unknown threats. It frightens our military leadership. So they decided to create actual threats." Marcus shook his head. "That's not just dangerous, it's stupid. You've proven exactly what they feared, that humans are good at spotting and solving problems, even in systems we didn't design." A new understanding. 3 weeks after the drone incident, Sarah stood at her familiar spot by the viewport, watching a very different scene unfold. A joint human Meridian engineering team was installing new safety protocols on the rebuilt drone fleet. The machines moved with precise, controlled motions. No wobbles, no hesitation. "The last of the compromised systems have been identified and secured," Marcus said, joining her at the window. "Reports from the other stations confirm similar findings. We caught it in time." Sarah nodded, thinking of the long days they'd spent working with Meridian engineers to identify and neutralize all the test protocols. The cooperation hadn't come easily. It had taken pressure from both human and Meridian civilian authorities to force full disclosure of the military's testing program. Engineer Chen. The voice belonged to Caxtil, the new Meridian liaison who had replaced Zixtal. "The Oversight Committee has finished reviewing your report on the incident. They have questions." Sarah turned to face him. Unlike his predecessors, Caxtil's posture was open, respectful. Questions about how humans detected the anomaly so quickly. Among other things, Caxtil's scales shifted in what she now recognized as thoughtful consideration. "Our engineers have spent decades perfecting these systems, yet you identified problems they didn't even know to look for. How?" "It's not about the technology," Sarah explained. "It's about understanding that perfection isn't always the goal. Humans expect things to go wrong sometimes. We look for those small imperfections, those tiny warnings that something isn't right. It's saved our lives too many times to ignore." Commander Hayes approached, tablet in hand. "The Coalition has finished drafting new protocols for joint human Meridian operations. From now on, all stations will have mixed engineering teams. They want to combine Meridian precision with human intuition." "Some among my people still object," Caxtil admitted. "They see human methods as unpredictable, dangerous." "We are dangerous," Marcus said with a slight smile. "But only to threats that endanger our people, and yours. The military's tests proved that much." Sarah watched another drone dock smoothly, its movements now reflecting both Meridian engineering and human safety standards. "Your people built incredible machines," she said to Caxtil. "But machines aren't meant to be perfect. They're meant to be understood, maintained, improved. That requires both precision and intuition. Both our species have something to teach each other." "Perhaps that was the true lesson here," Commander Hayes mused. "Not that humans can detect threats in Meridian systems, but that we work better together than apart. Your technology, our instincts." Caxtil's scales rippled with colors Sarah hadn't seen before, something close to optimism. "The Oversight Committee has recommended a complete review of all our joint operations. They want to know what other insights humans might offer." "Tell them to start with this," Sarah suggested. "When humans say something feels wrong, listen. We might not have your perfect systems or advanced algorithms, but we've learned to trust our gut. It's not just instinct. It's generations of experience, countless lessons learned the hard way." She turned back to the viewport, watching human and Meridian engineers working side by side on the drone maintenance. "We don't need to be perfect," she said quietly. "We just need to be willing to learn from each other. Even the most advanced technology can benefit from a simple human truth." Sometimes the best warning system is that feeling in your gut that something just isn't right. The station hummed around them, its systems now running more smoothly than ever, a testament to what could be achieved when human intuition and alien technology worked in harmony. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly into the void, holding countless more lessons for those willing to learn them. The end.